Once I had a picture of us, lost in the old apartment I got rid of. I never saw fingers so fine. My mother's been worried, she's calling all the time, calling all the time. A picture on the highway, arms across a belly full, a picture of you. Bellies full, drenched in light. I threw out every paper to keep you out of mind. Brighter before seeing you standing there, your hair above your shoulders, blinded by a glare, to see you standing there. A picture on the highway, arms across your belly full, a picture of two.
Wonderful to see or chat with all of you here. I think this time is one where we need to come together in community and support one another. We are doing everything we can to support you and fight for you and get you the best information that we have in any moment. So just a couple updates from the Arts Alliance. Huge thanks also to Quinn and to our staff and to Chris Dane for joining us once again as a fearless moderator. So thanks, Chris. We'll be also thanking our colleagues from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, DCEO, who will be joining us later in this podcast, webinar. And we will be getting the best information about particularly today's focus around small business loans, which many of us in the nonprofit sector are going to be new to applying for these. And we wanted to give you as many resources as we are able to in this moment and do kind of a deep dive into one of the pieces of the CARES Act that was passed recently federally. In terms of other resources, obviously, like many service organizations and funders, we have a resource page on our website where you can go to look at various funding opportunities. We will make, as Dimi said, FAQs and other resources particular to the policy space available there, and try and get those out via as many different mechanisms as possible to get the best information. I know a lot of information is flying around in a lot of different spaces right now, but we are making sure that the Arts Alliance is a place that you can go for detailed and clear and concise information about what you're eligible for, what you're not eligible for, and kind of what's worth your time in terms of applications and energy. We are also, I hope you all saw, very proud to be a part of the artsforillinois.org platforms. So we are helping to administer that. That is a place for shared content. We'd love for all of you in the creative sector to contribute content to that. That's really being framed as our gift as a sector to the people of Illinois, that we are not just here to ask for help, although we absolutely need help, but we are a part of the solution to this challenge. So that piece is really important, but equally important is the relief fund effort that we are helping to champion in that space. There is a place for folks to donate to that relief fund, and then Arts for Illinois is also a central place where you can apply for that relief. And we don't have a ton of time today to get into the intricacies of the relief fund. If you have questions about the fund, you can email any questions to help@artsalliance.org. And we will get back to you ASAP if there's anything. There's lots of FAQs about the fund and eligibility and all of that for both artists and for organizations. Of course, as you all can imagine, the fund is not going to meet the need, but we are constantly fundraising, we're constantly pushing, we're in the media, we're fighting for you, we're championing you. So we're continuing to help grow that fund every day, as we know the need is vast out there. But let me flip now to today's topic with the deep dive into small business loans. We do think this is a really important way that those of us in the creative sector are going to be able to hopefully sustain operations through these loans. And I will flip it to, who am I flipping it to, Demi? Jonathan? Yes? Yes, Jonathan, to start the discussion. We'll zoom out a little bit back to the CARES Act and then kind of zoom back into small business attendees, or loans rather. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, hi everyone. So Demi is going to give the screen over to me, and then we'll take a walk through some of the federal relief that's available.
Yes, so just click share screen at the bottom, Jonathan.
Okay. All right, can you see it?
Perfect.
All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for being on the webinar. We have a great turnout, and it reflects the need that's out there and the pressing moment that we have. At our last webinar, we took a walk through all the federal relief that was passed. And today we'll have the honor and the opportunity to ask questions of Director Erin Guthrie of the DCEO. And she'll join us around 3 o'clock. But before we get to her, I want to run through some of the pieces of the federal relief that are not dealing with small businesses or with nonprofit loans. And so we'll take care of that, and we'll have time towards the end to answer some questions as well. A lot of detail, more detail has come in since the legislation was passed. And we were able to look at some of the questions from the last webinar that we weren't able to get to then, and I've incorporated those into this presentation that I'm going to give now. So first of all, there are 3 phases of relief, and those phases, let me pull up here. So there are 3 phases of relief. The first dealt primarily with healthcare. And it was let me put this on here. It was known as the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act. It gave money to state and local governments and federal agencies to deal with the public health aspect of the crisis. That was signed. The second piece of legislation, or the second phase of federal relief, was called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, signed on March 18. That dealt with unemployment, dealt with family leave and paid sick leave, so health and time. And then the big package that you probably heard the most about, the CARES Act, was just signed around the time that we had the last webinar, over $2 trillion in relief. And a lot of that was unemployment and the small business loans. And we'll get to that. And then the question now is, will there be a phase 4? Speaker Pelosi has talked about the need to look at relief beyond these 3 packages. These 3 packages really get at the next 4 months. So what can we do in phase 4 beyond just the emergency relief into seeking to grow out of this crisis? Okay, we're gonna in here. So phase 1 was the supplemental appropriations. Again, I mentioned that that's primarily healthcare funding. So we're gonna skip that and go right to phase 2. Phase 2 deals with, and this is law now, health insurers must cover testing and they must do so at no cost. 2 paid weeks of sick leave is mandated. Family and medical leave is extended. And these aren't just unfunded mandates. Employers, including nonprofits who are providing these benefits, will receive refundable tax credits in order to help cover the cost. And that includes nonprofits, and self-employed can take an equivalent income tax credit. Let's dive into that a little more deeply. So if you are a worker, you are entitled, if you're full-time, you're entitled to 80 hours of paid sick leave. Part-time, you're entitled to the number of hours you typically work in 2 weeks. This applies to nonprofits, again, and to employers that have less than 500 employees. Now, we'll keep a lookout, but keep a lookout too, because the secretary might be able to exclude some small businesses, the very small ones, under 50 employees, if determined that this provision will jeopardize the viability of their business. And that, like a lot of things, we're waiting to see what regulations come down. If you're wondering how much that sick leave will be, what the amount will be, it breaks it up between whether you need the leave because of things directly related to COVID or because of care for others related to COVID. If you are yourself going for diagnosis due to symptoms or under quarantine, you'll get your regular rate of pay, and there's a maximum there. If you are caring for someone who is quarantined, or many of you have a child or children at home because the daycare is closed or the school is closed, that will be 2/3 of the regular rate, that's sick leave. And one of the provisions in the Families First Act, that phase 2, says that employers can't require that other paid leave or other available leave be used first. This is very expressly intended to be additional leave. So that's paid sick leave. In addition, the CARES Act provides family leave, and what it does is expands the paid family leave out 12 weeks. And again, like the paid sick leave, this applies to employers who have less than 500 employees, and that includes NPOs, nonprofit organizations. And it's really focused at employees who are unable to work due to caring for a child, due to child care closures or school closure. It's at 2/3 of the regular pay rate with a maximum of $200 a day or $10,000 aggregate. And again, many of these are rolling out. They are being developed in terms of the nuts and bolts of implementation. Phase 2, as I mentioned, not only has the mandate for family leave and paid sick leave, but it provides refundable, and that's important, refundable tax credits for nonprofits and employers that meet the mandate. If you're a nonprofit, if you're a business, that refundable tax credit will come against the payroll taxes that you owe. If you are self-employed, and this is really important too, if you're a self-employed artist or creative professional, you can actually apply for these credits too, for an equivalent credit, And it's then, because you don't pay payroll taxes, it's counted against or refunded against your income tax. We referred to it as hours of pay, and more details will come out, but the cost that the employer, that you as a self-employed person have for health insurance will be considered as well. And keep in mind that the effective dates of many of these provisions go to the end of 2020, and then they sunset. So those first two packages, health and time relief. The third package, the biggest package, and we're going to focus really quickly on direct payments and unemployment, and then we'll hand it over to Director Guthrie. But the CARES Act was a $2 trillion piece of legislation, and it did include money specific to the arts. It includes $75 million for the NEA, $75 million for the NEH. Now, the NEA money is intended for arts organizations that are nonprofit. The requirement or the expectation for a match is waived in this case, as is the requirement that it be a project grant. These are intended to be fast-tracked grants for general operations. $30 million of that 75 will go to state arts agencies to go out into the field. 45 million will be direct grants. And talking with Americans for the Arts and some people early this morning, the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, is really working out how this is going to happen in terms of the purpose and the process of these funds. But suffice it to say that a large amount of money will be coming through the Illinois Arts Council agency. Checks will also be coming to you directly. These are called economic impact payments, and they are intended to get cash into the hands of Americans as quickly as possible so that basic needs can be met. We expect that these payments will come out within the next 3 weeks. That's what they're seeking to do. If your adjusted gross income, and that means the income that you take in a year minus all kinds of deductions, so it's less than what you actually earn. If that income is below $75,000 and you're an individual, you will get a check of $1,200. If, as a joint filer, your adjusted gross income is $150,000, you will get a check of $2,400. Plus, and this includes across the board, $500 per child. And then it's not kind of all or nothing. It phases out by $5 for every 100 after you get above that threshold. Now, what do they base it on? They base it on your tax filing in 2018 or 2019. And if you have not filed for those tax years, get to it, because the sooner you file, the sooner you'll get the direct payment. Social Security receivers who are not required to file, they are not required to file a tax. If they don't file normally, they're not required to file a tax return here. There was some confusion on that. If the IRS has your direct deposit, that money should appear in your bank account. And then the last thing, unemployment. Unemployment has surged, of course. The most important thing to emphasize is that the CARES Act expands unemployment eligibility to furloughed workers, to self-employed, to freelancers, to gig workers. If you are an actor and you work on contract from gig to gig, or a musician, you are now, unlike usually, you are now eligible for unemployment. The CARES Act applies $600 to unemployment payments above what the state provides. It will do that for 4 months. It lengthens the time that you can receive unemployment, 13 weeks beyond the state maximum, which is 26 weeks. And we do have to thank and note that Governor Pritzker did, even before the CARES Act, waive the waiting period. Normally you have to wait 7 days in order to apply for those unemployment benefits. If you have recently lost your job, apply for them right away. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention with respect to unemployment is that some nonprofits have chosen, rather than to pay tax contributions or unemployment insurance every month, they have chosen what they call the reimbursement method. That is, they only pay for the unemployment costs when an employee actually loses his or her job. And of course, that is happening in mass right now. We're still waiting for a lot of details, but the CARES Act does include federal dollars, which will be transferred to the state, that will cover up to 50% of those costs. And again, we're still waiting to see what the details are. But again, suffice it to say that there is relief coming, and we will be tracking that very closely. There's an employee retention credit, which is complicated. We can maybe get into that into future webinars and provide information in writing. But we should also note that there's something in the CARES Act that we've been fighting for a long time, and that is a universal charitable tax deduction. No matter whether a tax filer files individually or takes the standard deduction or itemizes their deductions, no matter which route you take, everybody who files is eligible for a tax deduction up to $300 for any contributions that you make to nonprofits, including arts nonprofits. Wow, that's a lot. And it should be a lot because this is a crisis, and this is what government is intended to do. And so I hope this has been helpful. When Director Guthrie gets on, we'll look forward to her providing us information on one of the really important parts of the packages that I haven't covered, and that is small business loans. So I'm going to stop sharing here, Demi, and hand it back over to you. Or actually, we'll see. I don't think that Director Guthrie is on the line yet.
No, not yet. So why don't you bring Chris in?
Okay, I'm going to introduce the renowned Chris Audane, who sang on our last webinar. He doesn't have to sing now, but he did last time, and he is our moderator. He's from the Alphawood Foundation and is an accomplished artist himself. So if you have questions and they've come in, you've sent them in through Q&A, Chris is our moderator. So if I don't know the answer, because there's a lot that still has to be developed, there's a lot coming down the pipeline, we'll research it for you and bring the answer back later. But go ahead, Chris.
Hey folks, thanks for having me. I just want to commend Arts Alliance for being on top of all this. And you know, it's sunny today. The sun is out. We can appreciate that. It's all the little things. I see that there is a question, so I'm going to ask it for you, Jonathan. If an employee was married, filing joint, and in late 2019 started to file separately from their husband, but is still married, can she expect a payment of $1,200?
So if I'm reading the question right, it looks like the question is that if the status has changed, right? Am I reading that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
That's a specific situation that I don't know the answer to. All that I do know is what the IRS has said, and that is if you haven't filed in 2019, they'll go to your 2018. And so, you know, I guess their ideal is to get the payment out very, very quickly. And so I am not a tax accountant or a tax attorney, but I myself am certainly looking at the two different filings that I myself haven't filed 2019 yet, but looking at the 2018. So I would go with your 2018 if that seems more favorable and you haven't submitted your 2019 yet.
Oh, here's a really good.
Let's research that a little bit more too.
Here's another really good question. What if someone is not unemployed, but their hours have been reduced significantly? Can they apply for any help through unemployment benefits?
Again, we'll research that more, but my understanding is yes, you can. That it's not just for people who have completely lost the work, that it's also available for people whose hours have been reduced due to the COVID crisis. And then again, that's another important expansion that we see. But we'll check that.
All right. We are now waiting for our speaker, Aaron Guthrie, is that right?
Yes, I think she was just in, and then, okay. Yeah, we're trying to get her in. Maybe do one more question, Chris.
Sure.
Oh, I do have one, Chris, that just popped up. Should I just go ahead and answer it? It's about teaching artists.
Yeah.
One of the questions was teaching artists, are they considered employees? They're actually probably, if they're not on salary with a W-2, if they're getting a 1099, they are considered gig workers. So we talk a lot about individual artists, but we're also talking about the entire creative sector, including teaching artists and set designers across the board. The other thing I would add while we're waiting is that the lines online are very long. They are so long to the point with the unemployment office, if you go on their site, and we'll provide the link, if your last name starts with a certain letter, you're encouraged to apply on certain days. They are getting slammed, understandably. The claims are 10 times what they were the previous week. And it's tough, but hang in there, be perseverant, apply right away. And we're thinking of you. We'll continue to advocate, but be tenacious.
All right. Are we ready for an introduction, Demi?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So Erin Guthrie serves as director of the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, DCEO. She received her MBA from the University of Michigan, School of Business and Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy from Stanford University. Erin lives in Wicker Park with her husband and son. The Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity's mission is to support and maintain a climate that enables a strong economy for customers, taxpayers, businesses, workers, and communities by keeping, attracting, and growing businesses, maintaining a skilled workforce, and enhancing communities so that the climate here is one in which businesses, small and large, and workers can succeed to the greatest extent possible. And so I would like to bring in Erin Guthrie, who will start with a presentation, and then we'll answer some questions from folks.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you all for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfect.
Excellent. Well, I know that we're all facing some unprecedented times, and so I wanted to just reiterate that the governor and our department are really working together during this crisis to address the needs of businesses and workers as the economy is changing very rapidly as well. We're partnering with local governments and the federal government, as well as private entities, to address some of those challenges. We recognize the tremendous impact the COVID-19 pandemic is having, not only for your business, but to your community and families as well. And our team at DCEO is working around the clock to provide you with valuable resources. So I am going to talk a little bit about some of those. Do you guys have the ability to project the presentation that was sent around?
Yes, I can do
Okay,
that right now.
fantastic. Let's do that. Perfect. So, in typical times, our department works on, as Chris was mentioning, works on helping businesses grow and expand in the state, as well as workers get placed into jobs. We still do that, and that's still what we're focused on, although during this time, really focused on also helping businesses stay afloat, pay their bills, navigate the many programs that are happening locally at the state and then federally. So I'm going to dive into some of those in a second here. And then also I would say, this is just the start of a conversation. If you guys want to collect, I know we're going to do a little bit of Q&A, and then any questions that aren't answered today, happy to come back with some written answers. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So first, about a week ago, Governor Pritzker announced a new package of $90 million in emergency assistance programs for small businesses. All of the information I'm going to talk about today can be found on our website, which is illinois.gov/DCEO. There are quite a few programs that are out there, and it's not every single one is right for everyone. So we also have staff available to help you navigate what could be right for your business. But some of the programs include the Small Business Emergency Loan Fund, Downstate Small Business Stabilization Fund, as well as just the ability to kind of follow us on a very daily basis and see updates that other local and federal government resources are, where we can help translate those for you. Next slide. So let's talk about the Small Business Emergency Loan Fund. This is a $60 million fund that supports low interest loans of up to $50,000 for small businesses outside of Chicago. And businesses with fewer than 50 employees and less than $3 million in revenue will be eligible to apply. The great thing about this is there will be nothing owed for 6 months, and then businesses will begin making fixed payments at a 3% interest rate for a 5-year repayment plan. These funds can be used for working capital, so anything, payroll, other eligible compensation, and a commitment to hire or retain at least 50% of a business workforce for 6 months. And those applications went live yesterday. So those will be accepted on a rolling basis. Again, all of this is on our website and would encourage you to apply. We're working with many partners, and we have staff who can answer questions for you if you think this is right for you. But this is really to help you bridge some of the expenses that you may have in the next, coming months.
I'm just going to jump in with a really quick question.
Sure.
What happens after the 5-year loan period, repayment period?
Meaning?
So when you get to the 5-year period, if you haven't completed paying the loan, what happens there?
I believe the terms are set in such a way that you would complete the payments at the end of 5 years. But let me take that as a follow-on question to come back to you with a written response.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Anything else on this page? And we can take questions at the end as well. Let's go to the next one. So the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Fund. This is a $20 million program for businesses in suburban and rural counties across Illinois. And it provides grants up to $25,000. So a grant means it does not require any payback for businesses and communities served by our Office of Community Development. The reason that's important is because the city of Chicago has a separate fund, also funded through federally. So if you're in the city of Chicago, that would be the channel to go. If you're outside of the city of Chicago, this is where the state funds come in. That's sort of the differentiation. And businesses with up to 50 employees can partner with local governments to obtain grants of $25,000 in working capital. So again, illinois.gov/DCEO, and click on the community tab to find out more about this. I also want to talk about a federal program, which is the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loans. This is a program that, so we at the state work with the SBA. We have 32 small business development centers across the state. SBA stands for Small Business, let's go back one. Small Business Administration. And we work with them on a daily basis during this time to make sure we understand what's available. I think more will be becoming available coming out of the stimulus package. But let me just talk specifically about what's available now. So all 102 counties in Illinois, that includes Cook, that includes, if you're in the city of Chicago, can possibly be eligible for low interest economic injury disaster loans up to $2 million. All that means is you've been impacted by the crisis, which every single business in the state currently has been. So you may be eligible to apply. The interest rates are, you can see here, 3.75 for-profit small businesses and 2.75% for nonprofit with terms up to 30 years. I know that one of the challenges that the SBA has been having is just an overwhelming amount of applicants and responses. So if you are having challenges applying to this, our team is here to help. I'll get to some of the support resources that we have at the end in case you run into hiccups, but we've been kind of taking those notes down and flagging them for SBA so that they can navigate their technology and make sure you get the answers you need. So let's talk about the federal stimulus bill. This is a huge, huge bill offering over $2 trillion in assistance to the economy. But there are a lot of programs within it and they can be hard to navigate. So I'm going to talk about a few of them. One is the Paycheck Protection Program. The goal of this is to help businesses cover your payroll, rent, mortgage, and utilities and maintain an existing workforce. Our goal at DCEO and a part of the stimulus bill goal is to keep as many people employed as possible. And we know that's very difficult when you're not getting revenue in the door. So want to make sure you have a chance to do that. So these loans can be up to $10 million. Interest rates are maxed out at 0.5% for portions of the loan that do not qualify for loan forgiveness, and portions of it do. So I believe payroll does count for loan forgiveness, but we'll have more details coming very soon. You can start applying as early as tomorrow, April 3rd, and independent contractors and self-employed can start April 10th. The economic injury disaster loan, this is the same loan I just talked about on the previous page. The addition here is that borrowers can also request an emergency advance of $10,000 within 3 days of receiving an application, and you do not have to repay the advance if you're denied a loan. So if you're applying for any portion of that $2 million I talked about on the last page, and you need that advance to float some expenses, you can do that. A subsidy for current loan payments. The SBA will cover up to 6 months of principal and interest that are owned on most SBA loans, again, to help you kind of defer some of your costs. Training and advising for existing businesses. We know that some businesses are hiring or need to reskill their team. I just talked to a couple businesses today who are looking to reskill some of their staff who are doing wait staff services into delivery. So if you need to have funds to train your employees, I should say, some of those funds will be coming through small business development centers, as well as women and minority business centers. And finally, aid for mid-sized businesses and nonprofits. There will be opportunities to take advantage of a federal loan program, and they will not be as sort of easily forgivable as the small business loans and grants, but there will be some more traditional loan terms that tied to these. I know that this is all very high level. There's not a lot of detail here yet. We're going to make as much detail possible easy for you to digest on our website as soon as we get direction from the federal government, so that you can make a decision about what might be right for you. You can go to the next page. And then want to talk for 2 minutes about unemployment insurance, which is administered by our sister agency. So if you don't have access to paid sick leave or you're unable to work, you can apply for unemployment insurance at ides.illinois.gov. And the governor's waiving a 7-day waiting period for residents to apply. So what this means is if you're qualified, you can become eligible instead of experiencing a lag time. And the governor is also advocating to increase the total amount of benefits beyond 26 weeks, which is much like what was done in the 2008 recession. So that's something we're actively working on. Finally, I'll just talk a little bit about businesses who want to help. We've received an outpouring of volunteers who say we want to help, donate things, whether that's good, whether that's services, whether that's workers or other things. And so, not everyone's in a position to donate, but if you are, here's a place you can offer donations. It's PPE. donations@illinois.gov for the items that are listed here. We can go to the next slide. And then for non-PPE, so I've heard of people that want to donate food, they want to donate artwork, they want to a senior home, you know, they want to donate cash. Those you can email businessdonations@illinois.gov, and someone on my team will connect with you about what's the next step. There's also a bit more here about some of our partners who are working on folks that are altering their operations, or if you're interested in selling, you know, goods to the state, I would email this COVID procurement@illinois.gov website. Sorry, email address. Finally, if you're interested in donating cash, either as an individual or as a business, the new COVID-19 response fund has been created. Actually, the number is now up to $26 million collected. These dollars are going to go to United Way of Illinois. They're going to help provide basic services, food, housing and shelter, children and family services for people that may have been displaced. So anything you can give, even if it's $5, $10 is going to be very valuable to these communities. And then I also wanted to touch on the Arts for Illinois Relief Fund. So the Arts for Illinois Relief Fund provides financial relief to workers and organizations in creative industries. It's a partnership between the city of Chicago and the state, along with the philanthropic community. And these are for one-time grants of $1,500 distributed by 3 Arts, which is an organization that supports artists of color, disabled artists, and women artists. And the grants will be awarded through a lottery system. So more information is available at artsforillinois.org. Finally, wanted to leave you with a slide that you can follow us on our different channels. I'll make sure that this presentation is available to folks as you get ready to apply or consider applying. And I know we had some time for questions, so I want to make sure I leave time for that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Erin. I think it was really helpful and thorough. The first question came in from a couple of different people, and it's, what's the difference between the federal program and the state program? Can you get support or apply for both? Can an organization get both PPP and SBA loan?
Yes, you can apply for both. Yes, you can. So right now there's no restrictions. If you apply for something at the city level, the state level, the federal level, there's no restriction on having multiple applications out there. The one thing to keep in mind is that if you do apply for a loan, it's just like applying for any loan. So it does, affect your credit. So that's something to think about, is just how does it affect your overall credit as a business? But each business needs to take that into account based on their needs.
Thanks. So another question is about the calculation. Is it the PPP calculation for the loan? Is it based on fiscal year or calendar year?
I believe it's on 2019 calendar year, but I can get back to you on that exact. I'm pretty positive, but I want to make sure and go back and check. So I'll follow up with that.
This is a question from Joe. I applied for the Illinois Small Business Emergency Loan Fund, the Quick 10K, and received a rejection email. It looks like nonprofits are not eligible. Is that true? If so, what alternatives are there for nonprofits? Or how do I find out the reason for rejection? Thanks.
Okay, so, sorry, can you repeat the last part of the question?
The last one is, how do I find out the reason for the rejection? If that's not true, yeah.
And it was for the Illinois Small Business Emergency Loan Fund?
That's right, yep.
We should be able to provide a reason for rejection. It depends on how you're incorporated as a nonprofit. so I can't answer specifically why, but someone on our staff can help you. Chris, maybe you can collect that individual's email and I can route them to the right person.
Okay, so nonprofits are eligible, just to be clear, for the Small Business Emergency Loan Fund.
I believe so. Let me go back and check. There's some nonprofits that are not eligible, but let me check that right now.
All right, do you want me to give you a second to find out, or?
No. Go ahead with the next question. I'll find out while you're looking at that.
All right, this is from Kate Dumbleton. It's important to note that for the PPP, you cannot apply on your own. A bank or lender must do it. Organizations should immediately connect with a banker about this if they have not already. Can you verify that?
For PPP,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with what you're referring to.
This is saying that in order to apply for the PPP, a bank or lender has to do it and the organization cannot.
So for all of these, you'll be working with a bank or a lender to apply, but the organization would apply. So let me give you an example. With the Small Business Administration's funding, you would work with a bank to actually administer the loan, but you still do need to bring all of your information, your fiscal status, your financials. So it's up to you to initiate that process. You will ultimately end up being issued a loan through a lending partner.
And a lot of the questions are about freelancers and contractors. And I don't know how to phrase this question a way that you'll be able to answer it, but I guess, and maybe this is a larger point for Arts Alliance, how to identify all the areas, places of support for freelancers and independent contractors.
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges that we've heard is that because some of the loans must be used to retain workers, 50%, it might not be the right option for someone that doesn't have any employees, right? So my suggestion would be to look into the grants, to look into other parts, to work with us directly on what would be the best material, what would be the best thing suited for you. I don't know how to answer the question specifically other than that. For all the loans that require the 50% compensation to retain workers, it probably isn't the right fit for a sole proprietor. And I did get the answer for our small business, Illinois small business emergency loans. Sole proprietors are eligible, but nonprofits are not at this time.
That's good that we got that clarification. So let's see. Will EIDL loans likely be forgiven if employees are retained?
The structure of our loans is not likely to change based on what I described.
What qualifies as a small business? What's the annual budget size?
For which one? The general question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in general, they're all kind of in the same ballpark, but each of these loan and grant programs, it depends. So in general, it's less than 500 employees. In general, it's less than about 8 to 10 million in revenue. But in some cases, that revenue number is higher. In some cases, it's lower. So you'll need to look at the particular program to identify what's right for you.
Chris, can I ask a quick follow-up question to an earlier question?
Absolutely.
So with the we've had a lot of questions, and my understanding, Aaron, if you can confirm this, yes, you can apply for as many of these programs as you want, but, and keeping credit in mind, as you said, but you cannot receive all of them. So like, I know, and confirm this, that you cannot receive both a PPP and the other SBA loan. Both, correct? Like you can't be a recipient of both.
In some cases, you will be restricted from receiving multiple loans. However, the state is not putting any of those restrictions on.
Got it. So some of those are coming from federal, but not from Illinois necessarily.
Correct.
Got it.
Hey, Claire, this is Jonathan. The only one thing that if I may, that I would add is under the legislation itself, the two things that are exclusive, my understanding under the legislation is the small business loans and the payroll tax credit that I mentioned. We didn't go into the details on that. It's very particular, but there is something called an employee retention credit. It's a payroll tax credit for employers who pay employees during the crisis. That is, you cannot get that one and the payroll protection program loan at the same time. That's the one thing I do know from the legislation.
Yep, that is a helpful clarification. Thank you.
All right, I know I'm getting a note that Aaron's got to run. She's got a 3:30. So Aaron, thank you so much for coming on today and answering these questions and providing some information. Jonathan is available till 3:45 to answer a few more questions. And we'll have a poll before we close. But thanks again, Aaron. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I know there were some questions that I didn't have exact answers to or that need to be clarified further, with more detail. The sole proprietor one and possibly a couple others. So if you guys want to send those to my team, and I will get you a written list of answers, just so there's no confusion.
Excellent.
Yeah, we had some specific questions, particularly around how 1099s are counted and payroll as well, that we'll send to you, Aaron, too.
Yeah, please send those my way, and I'll make sure the team gets you answers so you can distribute that to this group right away.
And Aaron, I just want to add, if I may, you guys are dealing with an unprecedented volume during a very high demand of very complex programs that are in evolution as we speak. And so thank you to you and to the governor for just the remarkable efforts that you're doing to roll this stuff out and to answer all these complex questions on the fly in some cases. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry for not having sort of every detail memorized. I want to make sure I get you the right answers. And I'll just commit to you that if you don't get the answers that you needed today, I'll make sure you get them right away. And, our door is always open for additional questions. If you have questions about how to navigate as rules come out from the federal stimulus fund or other programs that we're rolling out, our staff is here to help. And so, I know there's a lot coming at folks right now, a lot of decisions about what might be right for you. So we're here to help you navigate all of that.
Well, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, there's a lot of different opportunities and it seems very confusing. And so I would, really suggest using the resources available. Arts Alliance Illinois has a lot posted on their website. To help you kind of navigate, whether a loan makes sense if you can get some of the grant opportunities. Jonathan, did you see any questions that you wanted to tackle in the Q&A?
Yeah, I think we can maybe, I can stay for a little while after the formal close. But I think before we wrap up at 3:30 now, we wanted to do a quick poll. But first of all, thank you, Chris, for moderating. It's always good to have you on. The poll is, we're going to be doing this every week because so many details are coming in so quickly as these programs roll out. And we want to be as helpful to you as possible. So you'll see a poll in front of you. These are some of the things that we touched upon today, but we didn't necessarily go into all the details. Which of these topics would you like us to focus on next week? We can bring in additional experts to answer your questions. So just take a moment here and let us know the topic for next week that you're interested in or interested in the most. And I think, right, Demi will be able to show the results instantly.
Yeah, we'll give it about 30 seconds if you see a question you want to answer in the meantime.
Yeah. And again, I do want to emphasize the relief fund that Arts Alliance Illinois and the Artworks Fund and 3 Arts have moved forward with the state and the city. We'll provide more information on that too as we follow up. All right, so are the votes coming in? I see one, grant opportunities was one. And if there's one not listed, just put it in chat too. So it looks like, reflecting all the different topics and the importance of them, we would probably need to do a 10-hour call next week because there's a lot of good questions, but it looks like unemployment benefits is certainly one. Employee retention credit, we can certainly cover that next week too, whether we bring in a dedicated expert or not. All right, unless there's any other things, I'll stay on for a little bit, but I want to thank Director Quinn and Demi and Chris and our Director Guthrie, and then Quinn, who provided music at the start. Thank you very much. We hope this was helpful. Thank you, Chris, for moderating. And we hope that we are able to see you next week at 3 o'clock on Thursday. And we will also make this videotaped version, a videotaped version of this available online so that you can watch it or refer other people to it if they have questions. So thanks a lot, everybody. What's the formal theater term when you do the final cut, the formal cut?
It's in the can.
It's in the can. It's in the can. I feel like people will be able to tell like the progress of the webinar as the sunlight goes across my head. Oh, that's film. So I'll try to get out of the sunlight.
So yeah, we've got about
30,
35 or so people still on with us.
Okay.
Chris, if you want to look through the questions and see what we can answer in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. Do you have any idea for PPP, how 1099 workers are considered? Can they be counted to salary?
My understanding with the PPP, and we'll find out more, and one concern that we had is that the employees are counted by head, not by FTEs, and that was one of our concerns. So for example, if you had a full-time employee and a part-time employee, that those would be counted as 2 and not say 1.5. I know that's one concern. In terms of contract employees, are they counted? That I will find out because I know that's very important to our sector. So let me look into that and we'll get back to you.
And I think there are 2 questions there, Jonathan. There's one about total number of employees and eligibility for the loan, which is I think what you're addressing. But then there's the payroll calculation in terms of actually applying for the PPP. And do you count those 1099 workers within the payroll?
Within the payroll, I believe that you do, but don't quote me on that. So we'll get that answer.
Just get both of those answers and get
really good question.
Clarification on that.
Very good question. Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of navigating and understanding, finding ways to understand all of the rules and regulations, but really good questions coming through.
Yeah. And again, as always is the case with these programs, it's the definitions that are the big thing. And we have so many different loans coming through. So we'll look into that.
Can you recommend who to call for advice as to which programs a self-employed independent designer can use? You know, a recommendation for someone to call so that they can talk through the best way for an independent artist to get support.
I can't necessarily recommend anyone in particular. I know one of the things that the Alliance is committed to doing and that we have in the works already, along with partners, even in other states, is to provide some FAQs on these things and to identify the FAQs that are already out there that are good. So again, be on the lookout for that too. Corals and Brady, apart from providing, they can't necessarily provide direct advice, but Corals and Brady has put some good summaries out. The National Council of Nonprofits has put out excellent information. Independent Sector has.
Lawyers for Creative Arts as well.
Exactly. Yep. Fransec, Mike Hernandez, who's on our board, they are doing outstanding work when it comes to issues of unemployment insurance. So those are some important resources.
And let's see here.
Can I add one quick thing?
Yeah.
I would note that with the PPP, the small business loan, if you are offered it, you don't necessarily have to take it. So what I would advise is apply for it and do so quickly. If you find another route that's better and it ends up that you don't want to take the PPP, you don't have to. But give yourself the option.
There's a question here, and I think you might be able to do this, Jonathan. Can you review what is available to freelancers regarding unemployment benefits?
Yes. So with unemployment benefits, essentially the CARES Act does two things. One, it will take whatever the state of Illinois gives, and the state gives 26 weeks. Or 26 weeks of unemployment. It'll add 13 to that. And then in addition, for 4 months, it will add $600 to what the state gives. So if you are a self-employed person, or a contract worker, definitely go to the Illinois Department of Employment Security site, the IDES. That's the site. It's the state site through which you apply for unemployment insurance. Go to that site and go through the process. Recognize that it'll be a challenge because they've experienced some bugs and some freezing of their site due to the high demand, but definitely go. If you are self-employed, you qualify, and you qualify right away. So definitely go to IDES. Is that helpful? Was that what we're going for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe I've gotten conflicting information about whether all 1099s count in the payroll calculation for an organization. I think we.
Yep. That's what we'll look into.
Yeah, we tried to get an answer to that.
Try to get rid of that conflict and find the answer for you.
All right. I think that's pretty good on the questions. Because none of the newer questions have come in.
Okay.
That I can see.
Yeah, and we'll definitely take Director Guthrie up on her offer to send her questions that she's got a big team around her that will get those answers to us, and we'll send those along to everyone who registered for the webinar today.
Yeah, definitely. Again, this is kind of a evolving situation, and
well, actually, here's one more. I scrolled further down. We had to close a show and lay off actors and crew. Will we need to rehire to get the PPP loan forgiven? My understanding is, again, we'll find out directly from DCEO, but I believe in order to get the loan forgiveness,
in whole or in part that you will. But we're a unique situation again because it's a particular show or particular production, and then that could change. So we'll find that out. We're also dealing with a system that has never really dealt with contract workers or self-employed before. We are not a population that they have helped before. And so they're trying to figure it out, I think, because they're not used to our sector. So part of our advocacy as the Alliance is to help educate them about our sector and its unique needs. So we'll look into that, but I believe the case is yes, but we'll check.
Great. All right. That's it on the questions.
All right. Well, we'll get busy. We'll get busy and do some research and continue making lots of calls. But thank you to everybody, and thanks, Chris.